The storm over Vargas 9 rippled like a wounded creature, hurling electric arcs across a sky stained green by chemical vapor. Acidic rain hissed on shattered plating, pooling in trenches where exhausted coalition soldiers huddled behind makeshift barricades. Reports spilled across the command bunker, none of them good. The Draxorian Dominion had tightened its perimeter, constructing artillery nests with mechanical precision, choking every escape corridor around the trapped battalion to the north. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was tense enough to snap. Screens flickered under the strain of failing generators. Alien officers argued over strategy charts while medics carried the wounded through narrow aisles. "They encircle us like we're children lost in the dark," a Silurian colonel muttered, antennae twitching. "If they launch their resonance bomb, the fortress to the north liquefies. 12,000 lives gone. And the coalition sends 1 human." Another officer scoffed, tapping a claw against the metal table. "A fragile primate. This is negligence." Snickers rippled through the room. Even the ones too polite to laugh allowed smirks to surface. The coalition respected humans diplomatically, but in military matters, old biases clung like rust: weak musculature, short lifespans, emotional instability. The door slid open. Conversation halted. Master Sergeant Elias Kane stepped inside, dripping rain, his uniform streaked with mud, his expression unreadable. He carried no air of theatrics. Instead, every movement was deliberate, quiet, efficient, controlled. He scanned the room once, then walked straight toward the central projection table. No greeting. No attempt at pleasantries. "Show me your most recent drone feed," Kane said, voice low but calm. A Mazuan analyst blinked twice before pulling up the display. Yes, Sergeant." The feed unfolded, a sprawling Dominion encampment glowing under the storm's pulses. Razor-scaled soldiers marched in disciplined columns, while aircraft lifted from landing pads carved into the swamp's hardened ridges. Kane leaned in, eyes narrowing as he absorbed every movement. A tall Zirian general crossed his arms. "Sergeant Kane, we were informed you intended to infiltrate this compound, alone." "That's correct," Kane replied. Murmurs buzzed through the room. A few chuckles resurfaced. "Absurd," the general said. "You cannot expect to slip through 70,000 Draxorians. They smell fear. They track heat. They crush armored divisions." Kane continued studying the feed unmoved. "Their focus is forward, not downward." He pointed at the marshland beneath the eastern perimeter wall. "That sector floods every night. Mud depth rises to chest height. Tracks disappear instantly. Your drones couldn't map it because their engines sink." A nearby officer frowned. "How does that help you?" "It hides me." Kane straightened. "The Dominion relies on predictable enemies. Not one human, moving where machines can't." That answer didn't please the room, but it quieted them. Commander Arishta, one of the few who didn't underestimate humans, stepped forward. "Sergeant, for clarity, your objectives are infiltration, disabling the resonance bomb, collapsing their command infrastructure, and extracting the trapped battalion. All under active Dominion surveillance." "Yes," Kane said. "And you believe this is achievable?" He paused for the first time, letting the storm outside fill the silence. "We don't have the luxury of doubt." The Zirian general shook his head. "Humans and their reckless bravado." Kane finally looked up. His eyes were steady, focused. "General, I didn't ask for approval. I asked for intel." An uncomfortable hush swept the bunker. Arishta hid a small smile. Kane outlined his approach, entering through the marsh, avoiding patrol paths identified via the drone feed, planting charges on Dominion power junctions, disrupting their internal grid before disabling the resonance bomb. Once the enemy's systems collapsed into chaos, he would open a corridor for the trapped battalion to move south. The Silurian colonel frowned. "You've planned this in 2 minutes?" "In 2 minutes I planned the first hour," Kane replied. "The rest depends on what I find inside." One of the younger alien officers leaned closer, curiosity replacing condescension. "Why risk this alone?" Humans aren't the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most technologically advanced. Why are you so certain you can succeed when others couldn't? Kane slid a microcharge onto his belt. Because humans adapt. We don't pick fights we can't finish. And we don't stop once we start. The colonel still seemed unconvinced, but he no longer mocked. With preparations complete, Kane checked each piece of gear: thermal dampening mesh, compact blade, rope spools, a handful of improvised EMP coils, rations sealed against the acidic rain. His equipment was practical, worn, built for utility, not the polished technological elegance of alien gear. Yet everything had purpose. Commander Arishta approached as Kane fastened straps. If the Dominion catches you... They won't, Kane said. Her voice softened. Just return alive. The troops up north, they're counting on you. Even if they don't know it. He simply nodded and headed toward the bunker exit. Outside, the storm swallowed him instantly. Lightning illuminated the swamp's twisted landscape. Tendrils of steam rose from the ground where acid rain struck metal debris. Kane descended into knee-deep mud without hesitation. Each step became slower, more deliberate, using the environment to blot out his thermal signature. Dominion drones buzzed overhead, scanning through sheets of rain. Kane timed his movements to thunderclaps, shifting only when the sky shuddered. When a low-flying drone swept closer, he submerged himself fully, mud coating his helmet and gear. The drone passed without noticing. He exhaled only when its hum faded. The deeper he ventured, the darker the swamp grew. The thick brush hid him from every angle, and he moved like a shadow navigating narrow channels between roots as tall as towers. Creatures stirred beneath the surface, massive, unseen, but he continued undeterred. After an hour of crawling, climbing, and evading patrols, the ground rose to a ridge. Kane scaled the slick slope and froze as the Dominion camp unfolded before him. Under the storm's flashing light, the encampment resembled a colossal metallic hive. Bioengineered walls pulsed with internal energy. Towers lined with resonance cannons pointed toward the trapped battalion's fortress. Tens of thousands of Draxorians marched, drilled, and prepared to launch the bomb. At the center stood a raised platform. A towering reptilian figure, scales black as obsidian, addressed his forces with theatrical disdain. Overlord Vraxkull. Coalition cowards! His voice boomed through amplifiers. They send a single mammal to stop us. One! A soft, hairless biped with toys and tricks. The Dominion forces roared with laughter. Kane watched from the shadows, unfazed. Rain trickled down his face as he adjusted his rifle grip. Laugh while you can, he whispered. Then he slipped down the ridge, disappearing into the darkness of the enemy lines. The Dominion encampment churned with mechanical rhythm, its metallic structures pulsing with internal currents that cast faint green glows across the mud-soaked ground. Elias Kane moved through the perimeter like a shadow, keeping low, body camouflaged with swamp mud and thermal dampening mesh. The storm overhead massed sound, muffling patrol chatter and the rumble of machinery. A pair of Draxorian guards passed within meters of him. Their heavy footfalls sank into the wet soil. Kane waited, motionless, breath steady. When they turned the corner, he slipped behind a supply crawler and studied the camp layout. The Dominion preferred brutal efficiency over subtlety. Power lines snaked across the ground like glowing veins, linking generators to weapons platforms and communication hubs. Fuel reservoirs, armored convoys, and barracks sprawled across the central fields. Every structure, though formidable, followed predictable patterns, a weakness Kane could exploit. He moved toward the nearest junction node, taking advantage of blind spots created by pulsing tower lights. A maintenance drone hovered above, scanning for anomalies. Kane crouched beneath a transport crawler until the drone drifted away, then crossed to the junction. The node throbbed with energy. Kane pulled a microcharge from his belt and applied it to a narrow seam. A soft vibration confirmed the magnetic latch. He placed two more, each calibrated to trigger a chain disruption without alerting the entire grid prematurely. He stepped back into darkness. A burst of thunder rattled the camp. The first explosion went off. Electricity arced along the conduits, followed by abrupt silence as power dropped across half the sector. Lights flickered, engines stalled, and a cluster of Dominion soldiers barked confused orders. Kane watched from behind a stack of plasma canisters. The disruption spread in waves. A technician shrieked. "System fault! Not possible! Redundancies should hold!" Another snapped. "Stabilize the grid! Now!" The chaos stayed contained, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Kane moved before they regained control. He crawled under an elevated walkway and reached a communications relay. Its outer casing vibrated from the internal pulse, emitting a constant hum. He unsheathed a blade, made 3 quick incisions along the panel, and exposed the core conductor. From his pack, he removed an EMP coil, handmade from scavenged scraps, and clasped it around the conductor. A faint beep confirmed the cycle. He retreated as the relay surged, smoked, and died. The moment it went offline, distant shouts erupted. "This isn't a malfunction! Find the saboteur!" Kane advanced toward the heart of the camp. He climbed onto a cargo lift and dropped quietly onto the roof of a barracks. Below, soldiers scrambled, unsure where to look. He moved across the roofline and leaped to a nearby watchtower platform. Through narrow slits in the storm clouds, pale light illuminated the central command structure, a massive pyramid of obsidian-scale plating. Its upper ramparts broadcast Vraxkull's orders throughout the camp. Kane reached a ventilation shaft and removed the grate. Inside, the tunnel was tight, but workable. He slid through, inching forward with deliberate precision. Heat detectors embedded along the shaft blinked faintly. Kane smeared additional mud across his arms and face, flattening his thermal profile, then exhaled slowly to avoid sudden temperature spikes. The tunnel opened into a maintenance room. A Dominion technician hunched over a console, cursing as error messages stacked on the screen. "No pattern fits. It feels intentional," the technician muttered. Kane stepped behind him, pressed a knuckle gently to a nerve cluster at the base of the neck, and lowered the unconscious body to the floor. He accessed the console, rewired the system, and tapped into the Dominion's internal grid. The encrypted map loaded. He memorized it quickly: bomb location, command nexus, patrol rotations, vault access lifts. All of it fit into his mental blueprint. The vault markings caught his attention. He zoomed in. A precursor structure buried beneath Vargas 9, sealed since the collapse era. Dominion logs labeled it a terraforming arsenal, ancient technology powerful enough to reshape entire worlds. If the Dominion captured it, millions could fall. Kane whispered. "So that's your real objective." He copied the access codes. A siren blared outside the maintenance room. Vraxkull's voice echoed through amplifiers. "An infiltrator prowls among you. Hunt them down. Rip them from the shadows. Show no mercy!" Kane slipped into the ventilation system again as Draxorian boots thundered into the room below. He exited near the fuel lanes. Vessels loaded with corrosive plasma stood in rows. He placed 2 charges under the primary tanks, not enough to explode violently, but enough to rupture the line and cripple the supply chain. His motion triggered a faint click behind him. Kane spun. A Draxorian hunting unit, 3 soldiers bred for tracking and elimination, stood at the end of the corridor, eyes glowing. "There you are," the lead hissed. Kane dashed left as a spear of plasma scorched the ground behind him. He vaulted over containers and sprinted into a narrow trench. The hunters gave chase, their heavy strides rattling loose plating. He ducked under a scaffolding, causing them to bottleneck. As they pushed through, he swung upward, seized a hanging cable, and pulled himself onto an overhead beam. A hunter jumped, claws reaching. Kane cut the cable. The beam fell, slamming onto the hunters. 2 collapsed beneath the weight. 1 managed to crawl free. Kane dropped beside him, striking with a precise elbow to the soldier's throat. The creature fell limp. Kane kept running. He reached the perimeter of the resonance bomb platform. The massive device loomed, humming with rising power. The Dominion planned to fire it within hours. He wasn't ready to disarm it yet. Other tasks needed completion. He turned toward a cluster of generators. The final set of explosives would cripple their entire electrical network. But before he reached it, Dominion alarms screamed across the camp. Vraxkull's furious roar thundered. You incompetent fools! One mammal cripples my army? One? Spread out. Turn over every crate. Search every trench. Kane planted the last charge and dove behind a stack of crates as Dominion searchlights swept the area. They illuminated shredded wiring, ruptured conduits, and cracked relay towers, evidence of sabotage far beyond what one soldier should achieve. He synced the detonators and whispered into his comm. Stand by for movement. A faint reply crackled from the trapped battalion. Sergeant, are you telling us you're still alive? Alive, Kane said. Move when I say. He pressed the trigger. Explosions rippled across the Dominion camp. Power grids ignited, fuel lines ruptured, and the entire encampment plunged into chaotic darkness. Sparks rained like burning snow. Soldiers stumbled, shouting orders lost in the storm. Kane slipped through the confusion, heading toward the bomb. This was his moment. He whispered into the storm. Time to finish what I started. The Dominion camp lay in shambles. Fires burned along collapsed power lines, and fuel reservoirs leaked corrosive trails into the mud. Smoke rose in thick pillars, mixing with the storm's acidic mist. Elias Kane moved through the chaos unseen, slipping between overturned transports and shattered barricades. Sirens wailed across the encampment, each one punctuated by panicked shouts as Draxorian soldiers tried to regain control. He headed toward the resonance bomb platform, a towering construct of obsidian plating and humming conduits. The storm's flashes illuminated its curved shell, each pulse revealing another detail of its lethal design. If activated, it would liquefy the trapped battalion's fortress in minutes. Kane approached the supporting scaffolding. Dominion engineers scattered around it, scrambling to reboot power systems. None noticed him until he reached the lower control terminal. A technician whirled toward him. You! Kane silenced him with a swift strike, lowering the unconscious body into the mud. He pulled off a panel and examined the exposed circuits. The bomb's core pulsed with eerie violet light, unstable yet operational. He spoke quietly into his comm. Stand by. Bomb's almost offline. A voice crackled back. Sergeant, we're prepared to move. Just give the word. Hold position. He dismantled the secondary relay first, severing the conduit with a precise cut. Veins of energy flickered and dimmed. The bomb's vibration slowed but didn't stop. Kane reached deeper into the mechanism. The storm overhead crackled, shaking the scaffolding. He steadied himself and disconnected a rotating node. A gust of heated air escaped the device, washing across his face. The bomb went silent. Kane exhaled once. Bomb neutralized. He closed the panel, stepped back, and froze. A massive reptilian silhouette loomed through the rain. Overlord Vraxkull stood at the edge of the platform, obsidian armor gleaming with reflected lightning. His eyes burned with predatory hatred. Around him, soldiers backed away, terrified by both the chaos and their commander's fury. You! Vraxkull hissed, pointing a claw the size of a blade. One human. One. You shame my army. Kane didn't answer. He kept his stance relaxed, shoulders low, center of gravity steady. The Overlord advanced, leaving deep imprints in the mud. You cost me warriors, Vraxkull growled. You crippled my camp. You dared infiltrate my domain. You left too many openings, Kane said. The Overlord snarled. Strength decides victory, mammal. Not tricks. Lightning struck a tower nearby, sending sparks raining over them. The sudden blast illuminated both figures, giant predator against lone soldier. Vraxkull charged. Kane moved aside just as the Overlord's claws tore into the scaffolding. Metal shrieked, bending under the force. Kane countered with a strike to Vraxkull's jaw, the impact barely staggering him. You hit like a breeze, Vraxkull mocked. Another strike. Kane dodged narrowly, rolling across the ground. He rose with mud dripping from his gear, eyes locked on the Overlord's stance. Vraxkull fought with brutal, sweeping arcs, overpowering but predictable. Kane took advantage. He circled to the left, baiting a heavy swing. When it came, he dropped low, driving his shoulder into Vraxkull's knee joint. The Overlord stumbled, regaining balance with a roar. "Small creature!" Vraxkull bellowed. "You refuse to break." "That's the idea," Kane said. The Overlord lunged. Kane ducked behind a support pillar, forcing Vraxkull to slam into it. The pillar cracked, showering them with fragments. Kane struck again, rib, throat, temple, each blow calculated, each one aimed at vulnerable points. But Vraxkull endured, driven by pride and rage. He grabbed Kane by the chest rig and hurled him across the platform. Kane skidded across metal and mud, lungs burning. The Overlord advanced, savoring each step. "You thought you could defy an empire," he growled. "This ends now." Kane pushed himself up, pain flaring through his ribs. He glanced at the damaged plasma tower beside them, its support cables fraying, frames swaying from earlier sabotage. One more push. Kane stepped toward the Overlord. "You talk too much." Vraxkull roared and charged once more. Kane sprinted toward the unstable tower. At the last second, he slid aside. The Overlord slammed into the weakened structure, making it shudder violently. Kane slashed the final support cable. The plasma tower collapsed, crashing down in a shower of sparks and molten debris. Vraxkull looked up too late. The structure fell over him, pinning his armored body beneath thousands of kilograms of burning metal. His roar turned into a rasp. "Impossible!" Kane stood over him, breathing hard, rain and smoke swirling around him. "Should have taken the mammal seriously," Kane said. Vraxkull glared with fading defiance. "You will be feared." "We already are," Kane replied. The Overlord's glow dimmed. His eyes closed. It was finished. Kane turned away and sprinted toward the southern ridge. The explosions he'd set earlier still burned through the camp, creating blind spots and confusion. Dominion soldiers ran without direction, terrified of the unseen enemy that had undone their commander. Kane activated his calm. "All units, move now!" The trapped battalions surged from their underground shelters, guided by the path Kane had carved. Thousands emerged in staggered groups, following his coordinates across ravines and flooded trenches. He reached a vantage point overlooking the extraction zone. Coalition dropships pierced the storm clouds, engines blazing through the acidic rain. Ropes descended, soldiers climbed aboard, medics pulled the injured inside. Commander Arishta's voice rang through the comms. "Sergeant Kane, report status. Resonance bomb disabled. Dominion command neutralized. Battalion is moving to evac." A pause. "You did all this alone?" "I wasn't alone," Kane said. "I had a whole army counting on me." He slid down the ridge and joined the last group heading toward the transports. When he reached the landing zone, the first thing he saw were the shocked expressions. Silurians, Xyrians, Mazuans, all staring at the human walking through smoke and rain as if he'd crawled out of myth. One of the officers who had mocked him earlier stepped forward, eyes wide. "Sergeant Kane, I misjudged your species." Kane wiped rain from his brow. "Doesn't matter." "It does," the officer insisted. "Your actions will echo across the galaxy." Kane glanced back toward the Dominion camp, now nothing more than a burning silhouette. "We don't quit," he said. A transport crewman waved him on board. Kane climbed the ramp as engines thundered. The doors sealed shut, blocking out the storm. As the ship rose into the sky, the battlefield shrank below. A message rippled through the Dominion fleet: Overlord Vraxkull was dead, defeated by the very species they mocked. Across the galaxy, every commander who had laughed at humans fell silent.